Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Beyond the Sidelines. I'm Erin.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Danna.
And today we're going to be talking about the new game day featuring a special guest later on in the episode. Game day is no longer just about the game. It's more about the kind of experience that surrounds the game, especially like with all the new technology that we have like coming on in today's world and how that's made its way into sport. It's completely changed the way that people view and consume sport.
No, yeah, for sure. Like, we have platforms like Instagram or X now that they give like immediate highlights and score updates. They post real-time updates, dunks like the NBA does all the time. Like, they have live scores on X. So that's a really good like experience for fans to just enjoy it from home and not being able to go in person. I think it's like really important to have that. So apps like ESPN and Bleacher Report, I think we all see that all the time, like on X or Instagram. Because I see the push notifications when they're like, oh my God, like a dunk just happened, you know, like it's so exciting just like to see that highlight.
Yeah. And it's really interesting to think about like how when people used to want to watch a sports game, like they used to have to either go to the game or watch just like kind of like a not so great like TV stream. So it's really interesting to think about how it's evolved to like where you could be on like a train watching it on your phone or like watching 3 games at once all at home.
You're never missing out on anything.
And there's other platforms like YouTube TV. Like, people don't need cable. You can just pay and you literally have access to everything.
Yes. Like, my family personally, like, we got rid of cable so long ago and we just have YouTube TV.
Yeah.
And like, I find myself, I'll be like the game this past weekend, it was the Commanders and the Eagles. Like, I was in line at Chipotle, like, watching the game on my phone. Like,
it's so easy. Like, you have access, like, from everywhere. I also think, like, it's so important for social media interactions with the athletes so fans can experience that kind of, like, parasocial relationship to build with the athletes. Kevin Durant is very, like, popular on Twitter. He always, like, interacts with the fans or, like, make comebacks whenever they criticize him. So I just think it's so funny.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great thing to like think about too, because with like a parasocial relationship, that's like kind of that one-sided connection that like a fan feels with like the athlete. Like the athlete doesn't really know them, but like the fan feels like they're connected to them in like that sense. So that can definitely be like a driving factor for fans to kind of like buy tickets to the game or want to buy their merchandise, which is kind of interesting because it is like one of those new pieces of technology, but it can actually like draw fans into that in-person viewing experience.
I don't know if you guys are LeBron fans.
Yes. Yeah. I'm literally a LeBron fan because of TikTok. Like all the LeBron edits I see on TikTok. Like,
do y'all know about Taco Tuesday?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he would like say it all the time, like Taco Tuesday. And I think like people started bonding with him because of that. And I thought it was just so cool because I'm not a fan. Sorry.
Sorry, LeBron haters.
But I would like to see that. I just enjoy him and his family. I just thought it was really nice.
Yeah.
It gives a more personal feel to the athletes that you wouldn't normally get that experience without social media.
For sure.
It's nice.
And social media has kind of like allowed that. Whereas like the athletes, they used to have to do like meet and greets kind of through their organizations. Whereas like now Clemson doesn't have to be involved. If like, for example, one of our football players wants to go do a signing event or something, like he can just promote that on his own social media and like go do it on his own, which is like kind of crazy to like think about. Like he can create his brand almost without any help from like the actual like brand that he's a part of.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think just going off of like social media, like that kind of shows like how like connected you can feel when you're at home. Like obviously we use social media, like friends keep in touch through that way, but like it really just allows you that sense to like feel connected to the sport when you are just like plain sitting on your couch. And something I think is really interesting is like the concept of like being on social media while you're watching a game from your couch, because like you're viewing the game at real time, but also interacting with fans on your phone, which just really, in my opinion, like revolutionizes the at-home viewing experience. Because it's like, why do you really need to go to the game if you're getting this like sense of like connectedness from your couch? I mean, game tickets are so expensive these days and stuff. Like, I just feel like it's becoming really hard for like the in-person viewing experience to keep up with that kind of at-home experience.
And especially if you have kids or large groups, it's even harder to logistically get together for an in-person game. So that's an added help to those people. And then we kind of even if we do have the social media experience, you still kind of aim to make it to in-person games. And I mean, you want to feel the community and all the fans and connect with people that think the same way as you. And this is like kind of the intra-audience effect, feeling that community and connectedness with other fans. And we see this a lot with home field advantage. I don't know.
Yes.
I know this was really big on the on like X and TikTok and everything. The Texas-Georgia game where there was like this controversial call and they started throwing all the bottles in the field.
Guys looking at the football. The entire
the students are now raining bottles down, and this is unfortunate.
It kind of brought to attention to a lot of people like how much are fans affecting the game, like when they're all together for one cause. It was controversial though, but you know, that was something to look at. And then like the times when the crowd's so loud that it causes like an offsides or false starts, that's real effect on the game. I mean, you can't deny that that really has such an impact. But
yeah, and as a community of fans, like we personally, like we feel good when that happens. Like when we get loud enough to the fact where like we go to Clemson, like where like South Carolina's getting that false start, like we start cheering even louder. Like it makes us feel so good.
Yeah, it's
literally
like a big sense of pride. But yeah, that's a big thing. Just feeling like you go to these games and you get to have an impact, just like the players or the coaches or anybody like that. So
yeah, like I totally agree with that. Me being a basketball player and like seeing the fans at the back, like they distract you. Like, oh my God, like they're saying like boos or they're cheering. Like, it definitely
gets to you.
It gets to you.
Yeah, and I think something that's also kind of interesting is kind of where like digital media and just like technology kind of plays into the in-person experience. Like going back to like the false start thing, like the video board, like posting like get loud, like it's a 4th down, 3rd down, whatever it may be. And then I noticed, I forget what game it was this season, but Clemson actually had a video made that they played on the video board that was like, it's really hard to play in Death Valley, and then just showed other teams false starts. So kind of how they use technology to like complement like the in-person viewing effect, I just think is like something that's really interesting because it's just like constantly being upgraded to like make the in-person viewing experience like more enjoyable, like through stuff that's shown on the video board and through this kind of stuff that's like being put into the stadiums themselves. Like I know in NFL stadiums they have like virtual reality viewing experiences like when you're at the game, which is like
that is crazy.
Insane to me. And with stadium upgrades and all that, like even like Roger Goodell said, like literally back in 2012 that like that at-home viewing experience is like outpacing the in-person experience, and that the in-person experience needs to make these like revolutionary things to kind of like keep up with that, which like once again I think personally is like really interesting that that was being said back in 2012, which was
so much has changed
13 years ago. Like the amount of things that have been like revolutionized since then,
even since like last year, like it's so crazy.
Just they keep coming up with like new things and you're like, wow, like technology is something, you know.
And even outside of that, for like the people who might not appreciate, like who might not stay home because they appreciate the more access to technology, like who might stay home because of like comfort, like stadiums constantly being upgraded to like add more like luxury suites, like comfort seating, like all these other things. Like I just feel like that, I feel like we're hearing about a new stadium being built or like a new arena being built every 2 years now, which is insane because they cost like so much money to build, but it's just so necessary to, I feel like, draw those fans in.
I think what's the last one that they've announced that's being built? The Buffalo Bills, I think, are building a new stadium and they're like covering the seats so it's not piled down with snow.
Oh, wow.
Which I feel like that's kind of the experience in Buffalo, though. I think they pay their fans to go shovel the snow out the seats, which I think is so cool. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that?
I would definitely go to
that. I know.
And I think that really just kind of brings you back to that sense of community. Like, even though that's not like, okay, you're watching the game, feeling that sense of community, like the fact that all the fans are shoveling snow out of the seats together so that they can all go sit in negative 10-degree weather together to watch their team play. Like that really just, I feel like, speaks to the value of like how important the sense of community is with that in-person viewing experience.
I agree. It's so impressive to be able to sell out a stadium when it is negative 10 because personally for me, I don't think I could do it.
I'm staying home.
Yeah, I need my big coat and everything, my warm blanket.
I agree.
Just can't do it. But I feel like a lot of that sense of community is honestly built by like this kind of sense of tradition and nostalgia that like cheering for sports teams and sports teams themselves like bring to the table. Like the Bills, like their fans are intense, and that's because of so much of the history and tradition behind like Bills Mafia and their tailgating experience, jumping on tables. Like,
let's go, Buffalo!
That's crazy to me, but like that's a part of like tradition, and that's just becoming so like important. I feel like in bringing fans to game is really capitalizing on that tradition.
Yeah, for sure. I think tradition is so important to fans. There's historic stadiums like Notre Dame, which it opened in 1930s, and instead of like rebuilding it, they just carefully like started doing upgrades because it's a historic building. They don't want to just like get rid of it. I think it's important to keep that tradition.
To preserve it, I agree.
Yeah, and I think going off of that, like you mentioned Notre Dame, but also like Lambeau Field in Green Bay, like obviously like Vince Lombardi, like that Green Bay team played there. And that is a stadium, I think it's really interesting. This is just kind of like fun fact, but like the Lombardi Trophy, obviously named after Vince Lombardi. There has never been a Super Bowl played in Lambeau Field because of like Super Bowls have to have a certain amount of capacity to like be able to like host like the event.
Right.
And Lambeau Field, I don't think it has that capacity, but also because Super Bowls aren't played in stadiums in cold, like in too harsh environments. To kind of like give that fair advantage to the teams. I did a project on this in like 8th grade. That's why I know this. I promise I'm not like a Green Bay Packers.
No, I love that.
But yeah, like, but that's the stadium, like they're missing out, that organization and that city is missing out on like hosting an event that brings a lot of money to the area. But the tradition of like Lambeau Field and like the Lambeau Leap is just like so important to them that it's like, it's almost not worth upgrading the stadium in a sense.
You would lose that traditional value that's so important and why people keep coming back year after year.
Yeah. I feel like, for example, the Grove at Ole Miss, I feel fans go to the games because like they like doing that. Also jump around for Wisconsin, they do in third or fourth quarter. I'm like, I'm looking up to that. You know, I like that environment, so I'm going to go to the game so I can get to do it.
Agreed,
And like, sorry Clemson fans, but like I got the experience to like participate and jump around like this past semester. One of my best friends goes to Wisconsin, and that is like something that's always been on my bucket list, is like jump around. The Penn State whiteout has always been on my bucket list. Like, so I think that just really, even outside of like your own fans, like drawing in other people, like that tradition is so important. And I think more so in probably college athletics than NFL, like NFL or MLB or NBA. Like I feel like it's really just so deeply rooted in college athletics, in that like college athletics have always been built on tradition. Like if you ask somebody why they're a college fan, not an NFL fan, they just say like it's just a different environment. And what they mean by that is the tradition that comes along with that.
It is.
And so I feel like with college athletics, it's really important to try and preserve that and like not necessarily focus on some of the things that the NFL is incorporating, like VR experiences and really super comfortable seats or like a really fancy stadium, but kind of focusing more on like how can you kind of upgrade the tradition you already have, if that makes sense.
Upgrade it and preserve it. I mean, that's what keeps people coming back. So
and I think it should be a thing. Tradition should be a thing. I didn't experience it till I came here to Clemson, so I was like, oh my God, this is so new to me, you know. So I would have loved to have that experience. Like, because I think tradition is so important just to keep fans.
And just like a question for you, like you're a basketball player, in your recruiting process, like did kind of the like feeling and sense of community and kind of tradition of Clemson like draw you here at all? Because like me personally, like I wasn't a Clemson fan growing up. I was drawn here by like other things, but like as soon as I got here, like something just like felt different. Like the first time I toured, like something just felt different, and like hearing about the cool traditions. Like I remember telling my family how excited I was and like making them watch the fourth quarter video.
Oh,
like
yeah, that's my favorite.
Before I even started going to Clemson. So like, did that kind of like play a role in your recruiting process at all?
Honestly, it did. I just like kept telling my parents, it feels different. It feels like family. It feels like home. And even like the tradition, like for basketball program, I thought it was like they have a good culture, good values. So I was like, this is home for me. And I went to the football game and I saw the guys coming down the hill. Yeah. So I thought that was so cool because I was like, people actually come for this. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on the note and kind of conversation of talking about college athletics and tradition, I'd like to introduce our guest, Sammy Roush.
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay. She works in marketing and fan experience for Clemson Athletics, and I'm just going to kind of hand it over to her to further introduce herself and kind of talk to us about kind of what you do, maybe like a day. I know obviously working athletics, a day in the life of like what you do in your job is so different depending on what events you're doing. But
for
just
sure.
kind of talk to us about some of the roles and responsibilities that you have.
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Sammy Roush. I grew up in a very small town outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I did not go to Clemson. I didn't have any family, friends, nobody that went to Clemson. I moved down here just under 2 years ago. I knew nothing about this place. It was actually one of the scariest yet rewarding things I've ever done.
Yeah.
I'm just turned 28, and so I was 26 at the time, and I just genuinely was like, if I'm going to do something crazy, might as well do it now. But I went through the interview process, came down here, and I'm like, what's this rock, and why do they love it? Like, I don't understand. But no, it was so much fun because I was able to truly learn about this place kind of in my own way. And obviously being involved with the type of work that I do, especially the relationships I've been able to build with our student interns was everything to me because they were the ones that kind of taught me the way of the land. And so that was super important to kind of my beginning, I guess, of my position. But yeah, when it comes to our department, ultimately, I guess the simplest way that I always tell people, or I always explain our department to people is we oversee and are kind of the ones executing anything that is happening at a home game other than the actual athlete play itself. So think video board, music, giveaways, theme nights, like all of it, timeout games, halftime performers, national anthem, all of that good stuff. So anything that's happening during the timeouts, that's our crew facilitating all of that. So there's definitely not a dull day, and a day in the life. I don't think I've ever had a day that's the same as the other in my 2 years of working here. But that's what I love about what I do. It never gets boring, and I work with some of the most hardworking people I've ever met. You have to be a special kind of crazy to do what we do, and so I think that that's something that I won't take for granted. We almost have just like this unbreakable bond just because of the experiences, not only that we've been able to witness together, but that we've been able to create together. I think that's something that's really heavy on our mind, especially, following up our first gymnastics season, like being able to be a part of something so magical was something that's so fulfilling for us. So that's just one example. But of course, any of the sports that host, because obviously, golf, we don't necessarily host tournaments here. We have a beautiful facility here. It's insane. But like golf, and we typically don't host rowing. I guess a few years ago before I started working here, we hosted like the ACC tournament, some sort of event here. But obviously not every single sport hosts things here. So we don't necessarily have to, I guess, quote unquote worry about those sports, but at the same time, all of our sports are getting the fancy schedule posters, and that we're the ones ordering those and making sure those get to the teams and all of that good stuff. So yeah, there's always something to do, thankfully, but also not thankfully, because I'll be honest, it can get a bit overwhelming at times because it just feels like there's not enough hours in the day. Yeah. But I give it to our crew. We work really well together, and we can kind of recognize when somebody's starting to kind of drown, and it's what can we do to help, even if you're kind of partially drowning yourself. Like if one of us drowns, all of us drown.
Yeah. Right.
And we represent more than just ourselves. We represent the entire university. We are probably, other than the athletes, the most fan-facing department when it comes down to a game day experience and a fan experience. So yeah, I suppose that's a brief overview of kind of what we do. A lot of planning. That's pretty much the name of the game with what we do, is we're planning for the next thing always. A lot of people ask me, do you get summers off? And I'm like, you want to know what comes after summer? Football season and soccer season and volleyball season, and then women's basketball, men's basketball, gymnastics, all of it. So we are consistently planning for the next thing. And it's always very fulfilling to be able to see such an extensive form of planning pay off, especially for some of our newer things. And I know you guys were talking about traditions and all of that good stuff. But being able to kind of see through that light of like, what traditions can we possibly start? Like, we are huge advocates in our department. Let's try everything once. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then that's fine too. At least we know. And if it even gives us a sliver of, imagery of, okay, that didn't work that way, but I have an idea on something else that can work if we tweak it a little bit. That's the mindset. And if the people that I work with and our interns don't have that mindset, they're going to crumble real quick.
Right.
So yeah, you're always just looking for the next innovative thing. You want to be the trendsetter. You want to be the Penn State whiteouts. You want to be the Iowa wave. You want to be all of those different types of things. Like, you want to start those. But you just got to kind of find the opportunity to do it to the point where you aren't neglecting your current traditions. But you're also, being innovative, and you're being the trendsetter, because that's how you stand out nowadays. Right. Everybody has their thing. Every school has their thing. We've got the hill. We've got the rock. Penn State can't say that. Michigan can't say that, which is very valuable in and of itself. But also the phrase of, like, if it's not broken, why fix it? Obviously, we've all heard it. It's dead. To me and to our department, that phrase is so dead, because we genuinely do live by, like, if it's not broken, take a look at it and find a way to make it better.
Yeah.
I like that.
And how do we do that?
Yeah, and I love that. And that's kind of what I was touching on earlier when I said the concept of kind of upgrading tradition.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to totally get rid of it, but, like, how can you make it better? Like, Penn State has always had the whiteout, but now I feel like there's this kind of thing attached to it where it's like Mo Bamba is played during the whiteout, which is kind of like...
Oh, they screwed up Michigan a few years ago real bad with that.
And
that was
literally just them capitalizing on their own tradition with, like, things that you talk about. You guys have a lot of involvement in, like, what music is played and stuff like that. Like,
it's very strategic.
Yeah. And just talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, so I work for Clemson football, and so I'm most familiar with, like, a football game day and what that looks like. I'm on the sidelines every single time. So, like, I'm just going to kind of talk about some things that, like, I've noticed on the sidelines, being on the sidelines, and just kind of talk about what kind of, like, planning goes into that, and, like, how do you decide certain things that happen with that, like, in terms of including, like, advertisements and sponsorships into the game to, like, fill those TV timeouts, because we've always had in recent years a lot of TV timeouts, but now we have the 2-minute TV timeout as well. Mm-hmm. So filling that with things like our drumline performance, our rally cats performance, the Great Clips hair cam when the game's, like, taking too long.
Yep.
Or we have the students race, and that's sponsored by
Death Valley Dash. It's actually, so the funny thing with Death Valley Dash is that actually isn't a sponsored. That was something that a former boss of mine here, she implemented herself. It was just something she was like, let's do this every fourth quarter, make it a tradition. However, this past year, Whataburger was so they're a brand new partner this year, which is awesome, obviously.
Shout out Whataburger, I love you.
Shout out. And What a Man, their mascot, he's hilarious. We love him. But a lot of people, I guess, have come to find out, I believe I can, in my head, I'm like, owner, CEO, they're the same thing in my head. But basically, CEO of Whataburger is a Clemson graduate. So that's kind of that's the tie there. And so I think immediately when the opportunity presented itself, he's like, how can we get looped in? They've been an awesome partner. Obviously, our corporate partnerships department is a bit separate from us, but we work with them so heavily, more than a lot of people know. But yeah, when we did that one race for it, oh man, was that hilarious. Like, it was just kind of, it was different, but it enhanced, and brought a little bit more, it just caught everybody's eye. It wasn't just the same thing. Because what we were doing before was just like, $100 Fanatics gift card to the winner. Yeah. That was kind of it. And we could have probably reached out to Fanatics, hey, you guys want to sponsor this? But at the same time, like, we were just kind of testing the waters with it for a little bit, just to kind of see if it stuck. And I'm not even kidding. It was the funniest thing ever towards the end of the season. We would just how I would find contestants for that. I would literally elevate myself up onto the student section, say, I'm looking for a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior to foot race each other. And then everybody knew what I was referring to. People are throwing their friends' bodies at me, and they're like, you have to do, like, and we would have students stopping us in the middle of the game. Hey, have you found somebody for that race in the fourth quarter yet? It was it was sticking. It was sticking heavy. So like, who knows? It might be a sponsored element coming up here soon, but that's honestly how a lot of those activations start, is just an idea from us. However, our corporate partners do come to us and they're like, hey, you know, we attended, especially with football, like we attended a game and we really liked how you guys did this, but we noticed there was no logo or sponsor linked to it. How do we get involved? We do that a lot with baseball and softball specifically here. It's just like we come up with a whole bunch of great ideas. I worked in the minor league baseball and hockey market before I came here. And so I've been able to kind of see and witness all of the little rinky-dink things that you can do in between timeouts. But it's like, how can we take that and make it Clemson and make it resonate with our fans? Right. Because what works in Toledo, Ohio isn't going to work in Clemson, especially going professional to college and all of that good stuff. But ultimately, when it comes down to it at the end of the day, like you just want things to catch people's eye and you want it to be interactive. A great example from this past season was, oh man, was this so funny, because there was a student that, you know, when they get Snapchat up and they do the letters and then they hold their phone up and he said, I want my, what was it? Like, I want my Bowberry biscuit or something like that.
I saw that.
And and like, that is a dream for our corporate part. Nobody asked him to do that, but the way that we were able to capture it, put it up on the video board, and then like a couple of plays later, we got it, and then he switched and he goes, I got my Bowberry biscuit. We put him back up. So cool. We made sure to get photos of it and videos of it because I know that like Bojangles loved that. Yeah. Nobody had like when those things happen authentically, that's when like Bojangles definitely leveled up in that situation. They're like, okay, great. Our investment in Clemson and this experience is worth it. Right. And granted, of course, you know, there's all different levels of partners, but that was a great example of just something that like became so interactive and, you know, it's bow time at basketball and all of those different types of things. Like you just got to kind of play with things and see what sticks. And typically it just starts with something so simple and then people latch onto it and then the rest is history. Yeah.
And you mentioned getting those fans like involved and up on the video board and stuff. So like, obviously, you're not the one specifically choosing what goes on the video board, but
we are.
But you're in communication. Like you're not the one pressing buttons, but
I'm not the one shooting it. But we like when somebody said like they've got all the different because our control room we have a big old control room. It's exactly what you see in the movies with all of the screens and stuff, and it sits in the Jervy building. And they've got every camera view up there, especially with like football, baseball. I'm sure you guys saw the hidden ball trick with baseball last year. And like. It's so interesting because Kurt Sutton, who is one of our video producers, he actually utilizes LinkedIn and he'll like kind of mic himself up and take a video of them during games. So like
I've seen Rick Bagby.
Yeah, he works with Rick and he'll post them on LinkedIn and it never gets old to me, especially when he had posted the hidden ball trick.
We just had a hidden ball trick.
See this in red. Can I see it in red?
And Meehouse just
Silver.
Just got tagged out at third
Back it up
base.
even more. Back it up even more.
Did that really just happen?
It low-key went kind of viral on LinkedIn and everybody was like, this is so cool the way that our camera, like our back-end people were able to display that. And now it's just reposted everywhere. I continue to see it reposted and it was months ago. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
My friends are always sending this like, oh my gosh, like people from way far away are like, did you see this? This is so cool. Like, I can't believe Clemson
I still can't believe he pulled it off. Like, that was so good.
So impressive.
I know. Yep. Good stuff.
But like with the video board and stuff, you're in constant communication with them throughout the game. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of utilize that to get fans involved and like get fans cheering? I know earlier we mentioned like putting on the video board, like it's a fourth down or whatever, or like even like down to like showing on the video board when there's like a controversial call and like the constant replay. Like just out of curiosity, do you have an involvement in like choosing that goes up on the screen or like is that them over there in the video thing?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of communication, particularly with football on game days, between Jervy and our crew specifically. So my particular role, me, myself, and I'm down on the sidelines at football. But half of my department's actually up we kind of have our own actual like reserved little booth room up like away from everything. And that's where all the computers are and all of that good stuff. And so Michael Marianos, who's our director of video board operations, he's a rock star. He's got a billion different buttons right in front of him, and he's the one communicating with Bagby and the control room, and he's saying, like, we need to get that replay up, and they're like not yelling at each other in a bad way, but they're like getting fired up over the headset. Like, we need to get this up, we need to get this up, because they know the reaction that it's going to have. And so hearing those conversations is always funny, because I'm down there. He's up there with all of his buttons. Bagby's over there with all his buttons, and I'm down there looking up on the video board waiting for something crazy to happen. And then just being able to truly hear the place just roar is really, really cool. Because also, just from my perspective, being able to hear that in my headset of like how that happened, there's nothing like it. And I think that that's something that is like really epic with being on the backside of what I do.
For sure,
Yeah. And I think that's really like a sense that you can't really get from the like home viewing experience.
100%.
And I think that kind of leads us into a question. We have a question on here about, I think, home viewing experience and kind of, I don't know if you want to ask that question.
What are specific things you can do to set apart your at-home viewing experience and in person, like you just cannot replicate at home?
Yeah. I think the biggest things, and it sounds cliche, but like the sights and sounds, there's truly nothing like it. And you guys were kind of speaking on it a little bit earlier, like when our fans feel as though they are making a difference, it's addicting to them. Yep. Especially with, when a false start happens because the entire place just is unbelievably loud. Stuff like that, it gets people hooked to the point where they're like, oh gosh, we got to go back, because if that happens again, like it's a euphoric feeling for fans. I think one of the coolest things for me and my crew and kind of what we do, and even just our fans in general, is like everybody can name like a fun childhood memory that they've had where they felt like they were a part of it. And I think that that's just something that like no matter what happens with technology, that's just not something you're going to get at home. Yeah. And I think that that's truly what sets the live experience apart. And that is a topic of discussion, because people invest a lot of money. They're paying for parking. They're paying for gas if they're coming in from out of town, which a lot of Clemson fans do. They're paying for lodging. They're paying for concessions. They're paying for what they're wearing, like all of the different things. The crazy camper people that are out in Jervy Meadows, like they're paying, like I know that that's a fortune. Like they're paying for all their tailgating equipment, their RVs. Like it is truly a lifestyle. But like the people that do it, they love it. And that's why they continue to do it. Money isn't an object when an experience means so much to people. Which how lucky are they to be able to say that? Right. But at the same time, like you can't buy that feeling, I guess.
Right. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that kind of answers a question we had, answers our question of what do you guys do that makes that in-person, like money, the travel time, like all of that worth it? And I think that totally answers that. And like, just once again, tying that all back to that sense of community that like fans really just crave, even with this like new game day where everything's trying to be revolutionized. Like it all goes back to creating that same sense of community and like doing things to like foster that. Yeah. Like I feel like with that sense of tradition, it all ties together in that sense. And going to like the fourth quarter video, we previously discussed that earlier on. We've talked about the video board and stuff. Like, do you think things like that make it easier to draw in fans in college athletics, like those different traditions that we have? Because like I said earlier, like I was so excited to see the fourth quarter video, and like fans, they'll stay, like even if it's a blowout, they'll stay till the fourth quarter video is over, and then they'll hop on out of there. So like,
I know.
Do you think that kind of, not in a sense makes your job easier, but kind of gives you a different way of looking at things? You said you worked in like the professional hockey world. So like, how is it different not having as much kind of tradition to capitalize on as you do here at Clemson?
I mean, every team has its own tradition. And like even in the minors, we had a ton of traditions. Every time that I go back, I'm like, oh gosh, I miss this. But at the same time, the fourth quarter video is a great example, especially with the students. I think that that's something that kind of always hits. However, like it can sometimes be a little bit disappointing it's like, okay, it's done, and then everybody leaves. Yeah. And it's like, come on, dude. Like, get real. Like, you're here to watch a team, but at the same time, like, I get it. because I've lived it as my own fan. Coming here to Clemson, like, of course, I want the best for Clemson for the rest of my life, wherever my career takes me. However, like, I didn't grow up the same way that, like, I don't have the same connection to Clemson that the students do, that the alumni do, that the lifelong fans do. I have a very different type of connection. So obviously, in my head, I subconsciously am like, come on, people. But at the same time, like, I get it. Because, like I said, I lived it with my Detroit sports kind of growing up as like, okay, I'm there to see one thing and one thing only. And then after that, like, I'm tired, I'm hot, I'm dehydrated, I'm hungry, I want to get out of here. Yeah. But it does definitely, like, the anticipation, especially like our first home game, like just everybody saying, like everybody's just buzzing about the fourth quarter video. And I big fat shout out to Kyle Coulter because he is like truly.
Love him. Shout out Kyle.
So big shout out Kyle Coulter because he is one of the most talented, dedicated, hardworking creatives that I've ever seen. Like he recognizes exactly like what those types of content need to give. And he has just continued to develop year over year. Like it just keeps going. But then again, it's like, are we going to be put in a position where it starts to maybe lackluster and it starts to like, okay, it's just the same thing over and over? I don't think we're in the position right now where that is happening. However, when you're thinking ahead, it's like, you know, how we very slowly, it's like fourth quarter video and then the instrumental of Pursuit of Happiness happens right after. Like, how do we continue to kind of add on to those traditions to kind of just add a little bit more sparkle to the point where people are still paying attention, but they still have the same effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that just, everything you just said and like that we just talked about really gives us some great insight into like not only what you do in your job, but like how your department works together with our creative video editors, our video producers, like our different, like the Rally Cats and stuff. Like you guys obviously have to work with them to be like, okay, you're performing at this time. Like,
Rally Cats, cheer, band, creative, communications, broadcast. Like we all work together so heavily, but it's all for one common goal, and it's to put on a hell of a show. Yeah. That's ultimately that's what it takes.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, like you wouldn't be able to really do any of this without your interns.
Oh my God, I love them.
Yeah.
You spoke very highly of them, and I think Danna had a question about that.
Yeah. Because I was an intern, but with IPTE, so I just I want to know, how do you approach the development and mentorship of those interns?
Yeah.
In such like a dynamic environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that always comes to mind for me is I was one of them once. And I know how scary that is, especially when all you want is just to like make an impression and you want to be remembered for something. And I think especially with what we do, it's hard because obviously, like, you know, we do come across some students that, you know, reach out to us and, oh yeah, I want to get involved, but their major doesn't relate anything to what we're like. You can kind of tell that they just want to reap the benefits.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And so it can be really hard to kind of distinguish, like, do you actually want to do this for a career, or are you just trying to like get cool pictures taken of yourself and get distracted and text your friends, and then you wave at them on the field while you're missing something with a timeout that is like crucial to our success. So that can be a little bit tough. However, I think not only myself, but our graduate assistants that are just as full-time as I am, I love them with all my heart. We have 3 of them, but like all of them, the rest of the full-timers, like we're able to kind of weed out those people just with asking the right questions. But at the same time, like the biggest thing with my interns too is I make it extremely clear to them as soon as they start, like, I can't want you to develop and succeed in this role more than you want to. I can't sit here and completely hold your hand and show you the way, because that's not how success works. Right. It's not going to be handed to you. And if that's what you think that this is going to be, then you are sadly mistaken. And you're going to find out. And so like just making sure that they understand kind of that they need to be self-sufficient, and they need to, you know, of course we're going to offer them all of the things and we're going to communicate with them. However, like they got to act on it. And also their communication to us and just telling us, like, what do you want to gain out of this experience? And at the same time, like, they're college kids. If I sat there and I said, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I don't expect them to give me an answer. And if people do, then that's just unreasonable. However, like, you know, part of internships and part of their experience is finding out what they want to do. And who am I to tell them that they need to go on and do exactly what I do? I have no right. I have no bark in that fight. But, you know, it's it's pretty easy to pinpoint the people that really, really are there to learn. And naturally, of course, just over time, they get more involved and we recognize them more. And we just build better and closer relationships with them. But at the same time, like I said, like I never lose sight of the fact that I was one of them once, and that all I wanted, like when I was them, was just somebody to believe in me and take a chance on me. Yeah. And so I am their biggest cheerleader, literally no matter what. On Instagram, on LinkedIn, all of the things, like I am always just telling them that they are the coolest people ever, because they are. But also not losing sight of the fact that, like you said, our events, like we can't do it on our own. There's way too much going on. And so and they have just like saved catastrophe from happening for me multiple times, because we control the controllables that we have on our game days. We really do. But at the same time, with what we do, things are going to go wrong. Yeah. That's just what happens. And training them to know, one, my favorite phrase, and they love that I say this, best part of our job is that if something goes wrong, nobody dies. That's a great thing. And also, like, if something goes wrong, and if it's a reoccurring issue that they are continuing to do wrong, of course, that's worth a conversation. But if it's their first time doing it, like, I'm not going to tell them to leave. I'm not going to say, you aren't worth it. I'm not going to say, you have no future in this industry, because that's not fair. Everybody makes mistakes. I could probably sit here and list a laundry list of mistakes I made when I was in college. But at the same time, like, just taking every single experience as a learning one is something I really, really beat into their heads. And also, all experience is good experience. So even if it isn't necessarily something they're super passionate about, do it. Say yes to every opportunity, because the biggest thing is you never know who you're going to meet. For all they know, they're going to go and they're going to work a tennis match, which might not be all glitz and glam or something like that. But at the same time, they might run into our athletic director there, Graham, who is just a freaking rock star. I love working for him. Like, we are so lucky to work under an AD as awesome as him. But, you know, that might be one of the only chances they get to have a one-on-one conversation with our athletic director. And then he sees them around the McFadden building where we work. And he's like, hey, what's up? Like, those types of things, like, you know, we can set those up, but at the same time, they need to really be kind of all in order to get the most out of their experience. And I love them, and I adore them as if I birthed them myself. But at the same time, you know, we have a lot of them. We have around 30, just less than 30. Wow. But at the same time, I mean, like, we're about to be approaching crossover season where we're going to have 8 sports happening all at one time. So we need them. We need all of those people, and we need them to show up every day ready to do their best, listen, communicate, but also, most importantly, create an awesome experience for our fans. The little things are huge, and I also make sure that I pound that into their heads. We have a whole bunch of little friendship bracelet making supplies everywhere, and I always tell them, hey, go make a bracelet and give it to that tiny human over there. And I'm not kidding. It has made for some of, like, the best stories. It really has. And it's those little things that make a difference. Yeah. It really is. And so I make sure that they don't lose sight of that too, because sometimes it can be easy to, especially when things go overwhelming.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Very thoughtful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And interns, you heard it here first. Sammy sounds like the best mentor ever. So you go to Clemson, you're looking for anything, reach out to her. No. But that's all we have for today on Beyond the Sidelines. Be sure to tune into our next episode. And we just want to say another quick thank you to Sammy for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. No, I love talking about what I do. I have the greatest job in the world, and I get to do it with the greatest people ever. So I'm always down for an opportunity to brag about it. So thank you.